Hello guys, welcome back to our Fanfic Hub channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto fall in love with Demon Girl and got harem? Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. After everything that happened a few nights ago with the Puppet King, as well me and Naruto talking some things out from our little incident, all I wanted was to have a nice long sleep. Instead, however, the rest of the team decided to celebrate after getting our bodies back as they dragged me along to the pizzeria we frequented a lot and then decided to take the party back to the tower where Beast Boy kept offering everybody tofu. Beep, I hated that shapeshifter and his damned cooking since I had politely taken a small portion of his tofu and eaten some. And now I felt sick to my stomach since the soy-based food item is now tearing my guts as I was puking while taking glances towards my bathroom mirror since I now nearly looked as green as him before wrenching my guts out again. I will beeping tear that piss goblin's head off and shove it up his scrawny asshole for dare poisoning us. I hear angry furiously roaring since I'm actually sort of agreed with her, minus the whole violently killing Beast Boy part since I do want to trundle him for his extremely crap cooking skills. After violently emptying my stomach, followed by some heavy breathing, I took a quick hot shower and put on my bathrobe before walking over to my bed since all I wanted to do was go to sleep, but instead got food poisoning as I massaged my aching stomach as I laid down on my mattress before glancing towards my bedside table staring at the books I'd gotten earlier today. Thankfully, the team took a rest day before the celebrations, so I had enough time to go to a local bookstore I usually goes to find Naruto's books. What I didn't expect was to see over 20 of his books since I had no idea he'd written so many, though 12 of them were red, titled Make Out Paradise, and written by someone calling themselves the Toad Sage, while the rest were blue books, written by Kurama and titled True Confessions. As these were the ones that I'd remembered that he had written himself, so I bought the whole series and was warned by the cashier that the red ones were just smut. Seeing as my body was refusing to rest, I picked up the very first, Make Out Paradise, of the series as I opened the book and began to read the first few pages before slamming the book shut as my face felt I was on fire as well, steam seeping from my head as I shakily dropped the book on my lap. Ooh, how can anyone write something so dirty? I heard Passion suggestively purring, making me shake my head as she was trying to fill my head with images of me and Naruto doing that. Naruto's godfather wrote that. This makes me both worried, as well curious as to how he writes. Knowledge commented as my curiosity was also piqued as I reached for the first blue book, titled True Confessions, The Sins We Bear, as I felt hesitant to even open it. I wish that Naruto wrote it better than the other ones. Timidity squeaked out as I began to read the first page, and then another, and before I even knew it, I was already 4 chapters in as it was incredibly well written and, while I wasn't one for romance novels, I can see why his books were held in high regards. Normal POV. While still reading the book, Raven stood up and left her room, heading towards the kitchen in the main ops room so that she could make herself some tea to help settle her stomach. Oh, hey, Raven. A familiar voice said, surprising the sorceress out of her book as she looked up and blinked in surprise upon noticing that she was already in the kitchen boiling the kettle. Looking slightly startled, she calmed down when she saw it was Robin that spoke. Hey, Robin. She replied with a nod in her usual monotone voice. The leader of the Titans nodded from where he sat at his computer. Do you mind helping me quickly? He asked as Raven poured her tea as she walked over and sat on the chair next to him. I'm making a case report for the other night, and I need to know what happened with you and Starfire. He informed, seeing as he, Cyborg, and Beast Boy were trapped within puppets, they don't really know what has really happened that night. And you can't ask Starfire because... The indigo-haired halfling asked with a slightly raised brow, trailing off so that he could explain. Because she usually exaggerates everything that happened. He said with a deadpan expression as she nodded, agreeing with that statement since the Tamaranian princess can get overly emotional. Besides, I need to ask you something. He followed up as she propped one leg over the other. This has caused the demoness to raise an eyebrow at that. What is it? She asked, wondering just what was on his mind. Something doesn't add up. Robin started as he leans back in his chair, folding his arms with his eyes shut in thought. While I was trapped in that puppet, I could still sort of see and hear everything that was going on. It was muffled and a little blurry, but I could still hear and see. He admitted since it was a completely strange experience for him, and he was the Dark Knight's prodigy, so that was really saying something. This confession worried her a little, as she may have an idea on what this may lead to. What confuses you? She flatly asked, already knowing where this was going. Did you and Starfire get any help? He asked, opening his eyes as he stared towards his teammate. I could hear someone's voice that didn't sound like you or the Puppet King. It definitely wasn't the guys, because they were with me, so I would have known. He stated, as that caused Raven to frown, which was completely unnoticeable due to her usual moody facial expression. Damn it, I was hoping he wouldn't notice. She mentally cursed, since she couldn't say that he might have heard something, since he would never believe that. Starfire and I were alone. Maybe it was the Puppet King's voice echoing around. That might have distorted the voice to you, especially if it was kind of muffled. She theorized, hoping that this would prevent the boy wonder from further investigation, since she doesn't want anyone else on her team to know about her secret personal life outside the tower. Robin thought it over, as that did make sort of sense given all his past experiences with the villains from Gotham. Yeah, guess that's about right, thanks. He said as he returned to typing on the computer. Taking a sip of her tea, Raven began explaining that had happened that night as Robin typed everything down. As for what Starfire and I did when we got separated, we went through the sewer system and wound up in the middle of the city. As we were trying to figure everything out, we had to avoid you, Cyborg, and Beast Boy. Eventually, we followed Beast Boy to the abandoned theater, and you know the rest. She explained, leaving any mention of Naruto, as she would need to speak to Starfire and ask her not to say anything either. Typing for another minute, Robin nodded. Alright, thanks. I've got everything I need. He thanked as the sorceress nodded at that, relieved that her leader believed her. Good night then. She said as she stood up to leave, as she took another sip as she left to return to her bedroom, hoping to get back into her book. Watching her leave, Robin frowned. While her idea did make sense, Puppet King's voice was too distinctive, so the voice I'd heard wasn't anything like it. Plus, there were also the bruises I had on my stomach and arms. Starfire's strength would explain the bruises, but the size was too large for her hands and feet, while the bruises on my arms matched my bow staff, which also raised the question of who used my weapon against me, as neither Raven nor Starfire could use a weapon as far as I know. He thought, pondering what he knew about his two teammates, as he then shook his head as he would trust his friends with his life, as there was no question about that, but he wouldn't trust anyone he hasn't met, especially if one can use his own weapon against him. It was now the morning after, and Raven yawned as she entered the kitchen. Her friends weren't awake yet, apart from Robin, who was doing his morning training somewhere else in the building, so she enjoyed the rare peace and quiet while it lasted. Pouring herself another cup of tea, she used her magic and brought a teaspoon to her, but just as it got close enough, her magic disappeared and the spoon fell to the floor, causing her to raise an eyebrow at it, but shrugged it off as a delayed reaction since she was still waking up, so she just wasn't concentrating enough. That and the fact she didn't get a lot of sleep last night, having stayed up later than she meant to, reading the Uzumaki's books, as she was already a few chapters into the second book, True Confessions, Illusions, as she was beginning to be a fan of the series. She idly thought of going to Naruto just for his autograph, chuckling at the thought, since he would probably be very confused at her sudden appreciation of his novels. Thinking of her new friend, the ashen-skinned Bluette felt better knowing that she was making progress with him. Hello, friend Raven. Starfire excitedly announced, scaring her enough for her to accidentally use her magic to make her tea explode out of the cup. Sorry. She apologized with a giggle at her fellow female friend's scowl. Raven begrudgingly cleaned up the mess that her overly bubbly teammate had made and poured herself another cup since the kettle was still boiling, so at least she didn't have to wait. Good morning, Starfire. She monotonely greeted back with a nod, after taking a sip of her herbal tea with an appreciative sigh. It is another glorious day. Would you wish to do the hanging out? Asked the alien princess, always happy for the chance to be with her friends. We could go shopping, or to one of your many tea shops. She suggested, wanting to hang out with her fellow heroine. Sorry, cut off the demoness, not really caring that she did interrupt. I'm hoping for a day off from work. She meant fighting villains, but a day out with Starfire was also a lot of work. The Tamaranian looked saddened for a split second before brightening back up. I was hoping we could invite Naruto to join, she began, but Raven was fast as she dropped her tea and slapped her hands over her mouth, shushing her as she made sure none of the boys were around. Once she made sure the coast was clear, she spoke to her alien teammate. Starfire, no one can know about Naruto, at least not yet. She bluntly stated since she wanted to keep her blonde friend a secret. Blinking in confusion, the orange-skinned Redette's big green eyes basically asked why she shouldn't have mentioned Naruto as the Bluette brought her to the kitchen table where they both sat down as she rubbed her head. Why must we keep friend Naruto a secret? She asked, tilting her head slightly like a puppy. Because. Raven started before falling silent as she made herself her third cup of tea since she still couldn't tell her teammate the real reason why, since Starfire was one of the biggest loudmouths she had ever seen, aside from Beast Boy. Because, both Naruto and I are still working on our friendship, and if the others knew of him and how we met, then things would get really difficult. She explained before looking back at her friend, as she could see that Starfire still didn't fully understand, making her sigh. I need you to not mention Naruto at all, or I will be angry. She bluntly said, making her teammate gulped at that as everyone had seen her angry, and nobody wanted to see that again. I understand, a little. Starfire said before asking. If we are secret about this, may we visit him? He is my new friend as well. She innocently asked since she wants to get to know her new friend. This caused the demonic halfling to groan as she pinched the bridge of her nose. Why does she need to make friends with everybody she meets, she thought to herself in annoyance. Not now, maybe later, but not now. Do you have any other questions? She asked, taking a sip of her tea. Is friend Naruto courting you? The princess suddenly asked with big innocent eyes, making Raven chokes on her tea in shock. Out of anything she could have asked, she asked that, she thought as she coughed, being able to breathe again. No, we are not dating. She bluntly said through gritted teeth as she wondered why Starfire had to be so innocent while her sister, Blackfire, was so different than her that it was almost unbelievable. Please don't forget that this is a secret. She reminded, since the threat of the rest of the Titans finding out about Naruto was concerning enough, then the chance they'd find out that the two actually beeped would be horrible. Starfire nodded, making the zipped shut gesture over her mouth just as the door opened as Beast Boy walked through with a yawn. Yo! What are we talking about? He asked, going over to the kitchen and rummaging through the fridge. Nothing. The Redette immediately answered with a high-pitched squeak. Thankfully, the green-skinned changeling thought nothing of it as Raven rubbed her head again. Why did I have to have a headache so early in the morning, she mentally asked herself while massaging her temple. As if the world was trying to add to her annoyance, the alarms blared throughout the tower, alerting all of the Titans that something was happening within the city. Within seconds, Robin and Cyborg appeared from the halls heading straight for the computer as the cybernetic teen groaned a little. Oh, come on. Dr. Light's already out and is trying to steal from the museum. He shouted in complete irritation upon seeing what was going on. How did he get out so fast? Beast Boy asked, digging his pinky within his ear. I thought he'd be out for a long time after what Raven did to him. He commented, pulling his pinky out along a small glob of earwax. Raven frowned at that and looked away. Please don't remind me. She grumbled, pulling her hood up to cover her blushing cheeks since that night reminded her that she had sex with a stranger who was now her secret friend. That doesn't matter right now. Robin said as he turned towards his team. Let's get down there and stop him. Titans go. He called as the Titans headed into action. Naruto sneezed as he typed into a laptop as he was working on his 10th book and was beginning to get annoyed because he has been working on it for a few weeks and has managed to type out a few chapters before deleting it. He has done this a few times and has done it once again since this wasn't the first time he had writer's block, but that didn't make it any less annoying. With another heavy sigh, the Uzumaki leant back into his couch and stared at the ceiling, deciding to take his mind of the matter and to get some fresh air as he stood up and left his apartment. Once he made sure that the door was locked, he walked out of the building, and took a deep breath as he frowned a little because even after living in this world for a while, he still couldn't get used to the smell of the city as he preferred the scent of nature his old village had. With no destination in mind, Naruto began to walk down the street, surrounded by all the citizens of Jump City, as this was something he found odd since all his life he had wanted to stand out, to make people notice him. Now however, it was the exact opposite as he wanted to blend in so that no one will remember him. Of course, that plan failed because of Raven and our whole night together. He thought with a chuckle as the thought of the female titan appeared in his mind as he had been thinking of her a lot more nowadays, mostly because they all keep appearing in the news, which just so happened to be now, since that Dr. Light guy that she'd mentioned was out again and was stealing something from a museum, but was now behind bars again as the Titans got another win. After their argument a couple of weeks ago, he felt like absolute crap with how the sorceress reacted, but helping her and Starfire fight off their possessed teammates the other night actually felt a little therapeutic to him because thanks to that, they're beginning to be on good terms with each other as he was actually able to let go of his guilt. Turning around a corner, Naruto was broken out of his thoughts when someone bumped into him, easily managed to steady himself within a second, but the person he walked into fell to the ground. Looking down, he was completely shocked when he saw Raven of all people, but something was different because her hair, cloak, leotard, and boots were gray instead of their usual dark blue, not to mention she actually appears much bustier and curvaceous than her usual slender build. "Raven? What are you doing here?" he asked, helping the girl up as his cheeks lightly blushed seeing her suddenly large G-cup bust jiggle from the movement. Raven just looked at him as tears quickly built up in her eyes shocking him. I am sorry I wasn't watching where I was going she said through an equally surprising Siri's sniffle as she tightly embraced him as she began sobbing against his shoulder. That's okay. Naruto said completely not sure what to say at this moment. With the way she was acting, it was like she's someone else completely. Given what happened the other night, can't rule out that possibility. But her chakra is the exact same. He mentally pondered while trying to fight down the boner he was getting from feeling her huge bosom squishing against his chest. I am so sorry that I was so angry with you the other day I am sorry that I hated you as well, and I'm so sorry that I left you when you were only offering to help, and the completely and suddenly emotional Raven continued to sob and apologize before the Uzumaki gently placed his hand over her mouth. Raven, it's okay, you don't need to apologize. He assured with a kind smile, hoping that it will cheer up the oddly sad girl. What are you doing here anyway? He asked wanting to know why the sudden appearance as well color change. The extremely curvaceous girl looked away shyly twiddling her index fingers as she answered. I don't know, after Raven was separated, everything was getting loud, then the others said they were going to put us back together because they didn't want us here anymore. By the end of her explanation, she was crying again as she once again sobbed onto his shoulder. Wait, what did you mean by Raven was separated? Naruto asked in confusion, wondering just what she was taking about once she had calmed down and apologized for getting his shirt a little wet. Aren't you Raven? He asked since he was talking to her here and now. I am one of her emotions. The gray-colored halfling timidly confessed, making him blink as he was completely lost here. An object somehow split Raven into several of her several personalities. I myself am one of them she added as she held her shoulders while kneeling down. Rubbing the back of his head, Naruto kneeled down beside her. Are you, her shyness? He asked with a raised eyebrow because if she really was one of her emotions, then this would explain the odd behavior. Timidity, she quietly said introducing herself as she then looked at him with big, scared eyes. I want to go home. She pleads with a sniffle as she used her cloak like a security blanket. With a soft smile, the former shinobi stood back up as he offered his hand to her. How about I take you home? He offered getting her to look up at him as she nodded and then surprised him by taking hold of his hand as he gave her hand a soft reassuring squeeze helping her up to her feet as they both began to walk towards the Titan's tower. You know, this isn't exactly how I thought my day would go. He admitted but hey, his life always had strange things happening around him. I'm sorry that I ruined it. Timidity squeaked with a sad look, thinking she ruined his day. The blonde Uzumaki gave her hand a slight squeeze again, getting her attention. Timidity, I am happy when I spend time with Raven, and I am happy that I got to meet one of her emotions. He said with a smile, getting the emotion clone to blush as she tried to hide in her hood after she put it up, but she smiled either way. We should be there in a half hour at least. He informed, since he could easily leap over the buildings and water walk across the bay to get to the tower. I can take us there now. The gray-colored raven offered quietly before Naruto could say anything, as she waved her arm as a portal opened beneath them both, as he stayed silent as he examined the portal he was sinking into, since it really reminded him of the Nara's famous control over shadows, although he doubted any of them could travel from within their shadows, as just thinking of the Nara clan made his face drop a little before he shook his head in case she saw, as they both completely sank into the portal before disappearing. It only took a few seconds, and they were now in front of the tower, as the Uzumaki raised an eyebrow at the first thing that caught his attention, because right next to the front door was a completely destroyed bed, surrounded by shards of glass. Not even going to ask about that. He mumbled to himself as he shook his head, deciding not to ask about that, as they walked over to the door, with timidity still holding his hand, as he pressed the doorbell, as he waited a second before the videocom turned on, as he quickly recognized the person on the other side. Hey! We're a little busy here, but can we help you? Cyborg asked from the other end, sounding pretty uncertain as well, sort of agitated. Yeah, hi, I'm guessing you're trying to find all the ravens. Naruto asked, wondering what other emotions the Titans have found. Cyborg now looked really surprised, since this mysterious blonde teen just somehow knew what was what. Yeah, we are. How do you know that? He asked as the Uzumaki stepped aside a little, allowing the camera to see timidity, causing the cybernetic titan to look even more surprised. Wow, you found her. We've been trying to find her. The elevator's coming down, just come on up, and sorry in advance for the mess. He informed, sounding very grateful before the video turned off as the doors opened. What did he mean by mess? Naruto muttered to himself, wondering if he should be worried, as he also wondered why he was being allowed to enter the tower like this. Shouldn't they be more suspicious about people showing up at their door? He asked timidity, who just stayed quiet as they entered and rode the elevator up the building. Once stopping on the designated floor, he glanced up as the doors opened and widened his eyes upon seeing that the room he walked into wasn't just messy, it was a disaster zone, as rubbish and junk were piled everywhere. There were even stains on the roof and an odd smell that he didn't even want to know about. Walking further into the comm room, Naruto saw the other 4 titans all sitting on the large sofa, with Starfire being the first to see him and was about to go over and greet him until she remembered Raven's words about keeping him a secret. Robin, seeing timidity, stood up and held a crystal of some kind. Great! Now that she's here, we can get Raven back. He announced as the timid emotion clone looked scared as he approached her, as she quickly hid behind Naruto, hugging him from behind. Do you mind not scaring her? He asked the leader of the Titans, since even though this was a part of Raven, she was still a different part of her. Sorry, but we need the real Raven back. The boy wonder bluntly said back, getting the blonde shinobi to narrow his eyes. This is still Raven, she is as much a Raven as a whole. He argued, leering at the former sidekick. Robin also narrowed his eyes as the two had a stare down before sighing. Sorry about that, it's been a long day. I didn't mean it to sound that way. He apologized, since the Titans have spent a good portion of the day rounding up their teammates' scattered emotions after defeating Dr. Light earlier this morning. Nodding his head in acceptance of the apology, Naruto brought his hand up. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, I found timidity here wandering the streets. She, like the rest of you, just wants Raven to be completely whole again. He said, formally introducing himself to the rest of the Titans. Robin, the leader of the Titans, said as he introduced himself, shaking his hand. But you've probably already knew that. These are the other Titans, Cyborg, Starfire, and Beast Boy. He introduced the rest of the team as each of them waved, with the Tamaranian princess being more enthusiastic than she meant. And you've already met Raven. He added, motioning towards the emotion clone hiding behind him. Can I ask what happened here? I didn't think the Teen Titans were so unclean. Naruto said, trying to come up with the right words, since this room looks even worse than his old apartment in Konoha. When Raven split, one of her emotions stayed in the tower as we were looking for the others. This one was laziness. explained Beast Boy before he folded his arms with an annoyed look. And she ate everything in the fridge. He grumbled and sulked since he was peeved that everything was eaten. Naruto raised a brow in confusion before noticing a large object held within Starfire's hands. What's that? He asked, wondering about the object that seems to be made of several other different colored crystals like the one in Robin's hand. That's the prism that split Raven apart. Cyborg said as he explained what had happened. We don't know why, but we're guessing it's magical. Once Raven split, it broke into several crystals. We've already gathered laziness, rage, bravery, knowledge, rudeness, coldness, passion, and happiness, he said with a sad sigh at the mention of happiness, since he'll miss that particular emotion most of all as he and Beast Boy began tearing up. Robin held the last crystal that was meant to absorb timidity. We just need to tap timidity with this, and we should be able to put them all together again, hopefully. He theorized while muttering that last part to himself, as he knows they were just assuming this was how a magical crystal would work, as he passed the crystal to Naruto, who examined it. The young author looked at the shard questioningly before turning around to look at timidity. It's your turn, I promise nothing bad will happen. He assured the gray-colored emotion, since she trusted him easily, much more than he thought she should, as she then looked sad again. What's wrong? He asked in concern, wondering what was on her mind. Once we're put back together, I won't see you again, timidity sadly said as she held her head down as tears welled up within her eyes again. Then to her surprise, Naruto pulled her into a comforting hug. I'm your friend, as well as Raven's. We'll see each other again. He assured as timidity looked hopeful at that as she nodded as she returned the hug as she closed her eyes. When we first hugged, I could feel your beep poking my thighs. She whispered into his ear with an embarrassed tone as flushed cheeks causing him to blush as well. Separating, the Uzumaki gently pressed the crystal upon her forehead as he watches as the girl glowed and disappear into the crystal, which now glowed gray, as he tossed it to Robin, who caught it with ease. Thanks. The Titan's leader thanked with a nod. Now let's get our Raven back, he said as he placed the crystal with the rest of the prism. Everyone watched as it glowed white and rose into the air before releasing an extremely bright flash, forcing everyone to close their eyes until the light died down, allowing them to open their eyes again as they all saw Raven, the real Raven, holding the now empty prism as she stared at them with her usual blank, expressionless face. I told you, you shouldn't mess around with this, she said with her usual monotone voice at the usual I told you so manner. But thanks for making me whole again. She finished with a slight smile as the other Titans tried to figure out if she was being sincere or not, as she went over to Naruto. Thank you, for looking after timidity. She thanked her friend for looking out for her most vulnerable emotion as he just shrugged his shoulders. No problem, I liked her since she reminded me of a friend. Although, I didn't think you would feel sorry for everything, he admitted, since he didn't know she blames herself for that night just as much as he did. I don't, that's just how timidity is, the indigo-haired sorceress quickly replied as they both walked out of the comm room and down a hall, stopping at a door with her name on it as she glances towards him with a small smirk on her lips. By the way, I found your books, she confessed, since she plans on finishing the rest of it and then the rest of the series. Oh, really, what do you think of them? He asked with a smile, wondering if she liked them. I've already finished the first book. I would have finished the second if it wasn't for everything that happened, she said, since getting split into several separate versions of herself was pretty strange of an experience. Want me to sign them for you? He offered with a grin as she also smiled, knowing it was a joke. How about we talk some more tomorrow? I've got to go now anyway, still working on my next book, he said, offering an invitation to hang out as she opened a portal for him, allowing him to return to his apartment in an instant. If I get to see an early draft of your book, then I'll think about it, she replied, getting him to laugh as he walked thought, saying his goodbye just as the portal closed as she stayed where she was for a second before walking into her room. She still had that second book to read, after all. So, where are you from exactly? Raven asked Naruto as the two were currently within a coffee shop that the sorceress frequented quite often, as the baristas liked to give her free drinks as it was still a little early in the morning, so there weren't a lot of people about. The whiskered blonde raised an eyebrow at the question as he wrote down a few notes for his latest book in a notebook. I already told you, I used to live in Gotham City for a while before I moved here. He replied, having already informed her that he used to live in the most crime-ridden city before moving here. Rolling her eyes, the Titan crossed her arms as she spoke. Yes, you told me you lived there for a while. I'm asking where you grew up before you started moving around. She once again asked with clarification to her question. Ah. The Uzumaki sighed as he finally understood the question, as he recalled the idea he had of telling people that he grew up in a remote village in Japan, since it was believable as his native language was coincidentally like Japanese, as remembering this reminded him of the months he spent using clones to learn and understand English, something he doesn't want to repeat, as the backlash from dispelling all those clones it gave him a severe headache. Well? Raven asked, getting impatient as her friend stayed silent. Konohagakure. Naruto answered, getting a confused look from the bluette. My home, it's where I grew up. He clarified, deciding on telling her the truth. Konoha was a beautiful village, lying within the middle of a huge forest, with trees as far as the eye can see, as the name actually means, the village hidden in the leaves. He explained a bit about his home village before his expression changed to depressed as he had stopped writing. Seeing the sad look in his eyes, Raven rested her chin on her knuckles as she leans a bit forward. You miss it, don't you? She asked, sensing his emotions as he tried masking his own feelings with a snort. Nope, everyone there was an ass. I'm glad I'm away from there, and I plan on keeping it that way. He stated with a forced grin, catching the demoness by surprise at the sudden mood change. So, how's the book doing for you? He asked, as the book in question was the third installment of his series, True Confessions, Betrayal. It's good so far. I honestly wasn't expecting such a twist in the 7th chapter. Raven answered, remembering how tired she was from the whole personality-splitting incident a few days ago when she began that book, and then she was wide awake as soon as she read the plot twist, as she was now only halfway through the book. Well, the title is called Betrayal, after all. Naruto said with a knowing grin, as well the slight jokiness in his tone. Still, where do you even get these ideas? She asked, as his only answer was a shrug, since he honestly didn't know where these ideas came from, they just came to him, and he makes it all up as he writes. So, your team still is annoying you? The former shinobi asked, deciding to change the subject as well keep the conversation going. It's like they do everything they can to ruin my day, Raven disgruntledly answered as she finishes drinking her tea before signaling the barista that she would like another cup, which was immediately brought over as she says her thanks. Any demonic changes happen to you lately? She asked with a raised eyebrow. Smirking at the question, Naruto jokingly checked himself over and used a teaspoon to check his reflection. I don't look any different, so I don't think so. Why? Sense a spike of that energy again? He asked with a chuckle. Raven huffed, not finding the joke very funny. No, I still don't sense anything. I wish you would just tell me what it was already. She said with mild irritation, since her friend was still keeping some things from her. I wish I could remember that night. Maybe I could be of more help if I did. Naruto said with a frown, wishing he could remember anything from that night where the two ended up naked in his bed. Please, you just want to remember it so you can use it in your books. Raven retorted with a scoff as she turned her head away, as the memory of that night caused her cheeks to flush. Feeling offended, the whiskered blonde closed his notebook as he leered towards the heroine. Okay, first off, that isn't true. Second, I'm not a pervert like my godfather who would have done that without hesitating, he argued before smirking a little as he gave his next reply. Although, you don't sound like you're against the idea, he teasingly said with a suggestive tone, causing the halfling's eyes to widen. What? That's not true. Why would you even think I would want to remember that part? She began to sputter at the accusation, not expecting it at all as her face flushed, remembering just how her body felt after all the rough sex they had. Haha. Naruto began laughing when he saw Raven's stoic ashen face glowing bright red as his laughing stopped when he suddenly fell onto the floor without any warning. Ag. Groaning a little as he sat upright on the floor, the Uzumaki looked up to see the Titan's smirking face and then to his chair as he narrowed his eyes upon seeing the broken leg as he picked it up and showed it to her as she had an obviously fake surprised look on her face. That chair must have faulty or something, she vaguely said, trying to hide her smirk behind her cup of tea. Yeah, or something, the shinobi muttered with his own smirk. However, just as he stood up, there was a smash from a window causing them to look in the direction the noise came from and saw a shattered window before looking down where they both spotted the object that was thrown, causing their eyes to widen, seeing a grenade. Raven quickly used her magic to throw it to the other side of the room just as Naruto grabbed her and jumped towards the baristas as they all ducked behind the counter. Boom! A second later, the grenade exploded, destroying everything around it, leaving burning wood and debris everywhere as Naruto slowly raised his head above the surprisingly still-built counter. Who throws a grenade into a cafe? He exclaimed, clearing enraged seeing the destruction to the cafe. Are you okay? Raven asked the two baristas, who nodded back. What about you? She began to ask as she turned towards the blonde but saw that he was already outside. Naruto, she finished with a sigh, wondering how stupid he could be if he runs towards the person who threw the grenade. Who threw that? Naruto shouted to the empty street as the sorceress stood next to him, also eyeing the street but seeing no one. I can't sense anyone, she muttered in suspicion since there was no possible way someone could flee the scene after just throwing a grenade into a small building. Naruto turned towards the roof of the buildings on the opposite side of the street, then to the alley a few buildings down as he narrowed his eyes when he too realized he couldn't sense anyone either but knew there were a few of them. Spinning around, the shinobi quickly caught a foot that was aimed at his head and swung the person to the middle of the street. Got a strong kick there, who are you? He asked, shaking his hand a little as he and Raven focused their attention on the assailant. The person in question wore a black full bodysuit with metal plating on each limb and around their neck, while their mask was a simple orange circle. There's no point in asking them that, they're robots. Raven said with a scowl as she and her team knew these robots and whom they work for. Well, that explains the kick. Literally felt like I got hit by a metal baseball bat. Naruto commented before noticing something. That robot isn't alone, by the way. He added as the ashen-skinned bluette looked and saw that he was right as another 5 robots appeared from the alley in front of them. You take the ones on the left, he suggested while cracking his knuckles. Even though he wanted to keep a low profile and not to be noticed, he couldn't just let some robots get away with throwing a grenade at him and Raven as well, the baristas. I don't know if you can take them on, Raven admitted with a little worried expression on her face. Naruto snorted a little hearing her doubt. You do remember that I fought Robin, right? He replied, masking his own concern since the closest he came to fighting robots were the puppets used by Sasori of the Red Sand. The Robin you fought was possessed and was acting on instinct and muscle memory, more or less, Raven countered as she glances towards the 6 robots surrounding them. These robots belong to a man named Slade, a mercenary who can fight us for fun. He designed and built these robots for that purpose as well. She further explained, informing her friend a bit about her team's most dangerous villain. Hearing this made Naruto smirk as he always liked a challenge back in his old life. As if they were tired of waiting, the robots ran at them both. Easily seeing the attack, the former shinobi blocked one of the robot's punches and then grabbed its arm, grunting a little as he spun around and swung the robot into its lookalike, knocking them both back. Raven, seeing the opportunity, used her powers and lifted a lamppost as she tried wrapping it around the 2 robots, but they got away too quickly. Punching one in the face, Naruto ducked and flipped, kicking another in the chin before he punched it in the chest, knocking over a couple behind it while another robot appeared behind him, and just as he turned to face it, a few pieces of debris covered in black energy appeared and crushed the robot as it dropped down. As he glances towards the demoness, nodding his thanks to her as he stepped aside, another strike from another robot before grabbing its head and slamming it into a wall next to them, shattering its face, revealing the circuitry which sparked as the lights inside died. Both he and the Titan stood next to each other as they looked at the 4 remaining robots as each pulled out a weapon and took aim, as the 2 were forced to dodge via jumping/flying as the robots fired yellow beams at them. Jumping over one, Naruto caught its arm as it swung at him before bending it at an odd angle, making the robot accidentally fired the weapon at one of its accomplices before bending the arm again, making the weapon fired into the robot's own stomach just as Raven hurled a car at the last two, slamming them into the far wall. Panting a little as everything calmed down, the Uzumaki laughed a little. "Well, glad that's over with," he stated, crackling his back and neck, since it's sure been a while since he was in a fight against a group of opponents. "Was it not as easy as you thought it would be?" Raven asked as she kneeled down to begin examining one of the robots. "They were better than I thought, I'll admit that," he said as he rubbed his jaw. "The last one I took out got a few hits in, and with a metal fist, it hurt," he added while the Bluette pulled out her communicator and called her team. While he looked closely at the robot, he grappled with pulling off the mask to reveal a head full of wires and electronics. "I'm not even going to attempt to try and understand this," he muttered to himself, since he'll never understand technology. Hearing a noise, the Uzumaki turned to the two robots the sorceress took out with a car as his eyes widened, seeing one of them beginning to move before pulling out a weird-looking gun as the robot looked at him before turning its attention towards Raven. "No!" Naruto shouted as the robot fired a red blast of energy at her, but he manages to get in between her and the blast just before it hit as he took the shot to the chest. Spinning around at the shout, Raven was shocked to see the robot aiming at her with an odd-looking weapon as she was about to use her magic when a knife appeared and stabbed the robot in the head, making it flop lifelessly before turning her attention towards the shinobi, who was on his knees with his arm outstretched, showing that he was the one that threw the knife. Deciding to ask about the weapon later, she checked him over but saw no injuries at all, which confused her. "Are you okay?" she asked, since she couldn't help but feel concerned for her friend. Patting himself on the chest to see if he was hurt, Naruto was also confused. "Yeah, I'm fine." "How am I fine?" he questioned before standing up with the Bluette's help, but she just looked equally confused. "I don't know, as far as I can tell you're fine," she said with furrowed brow as she shook her head a little. "I'll let my team know what happened, and they said that they were all attacked as well," she said, revealing that each of the other Titans were also attacked by Slade's robots. "I guess it was smart to attack when you were all separated," Naruto said as he had to admit that whoever this Slade person is must have been studying the Titans and waited until they were each on their own before striking. "But in the end, they were still all beaten, so maybe we stopped that Slade guy's plan?" he questioned, unsure if things were over now that these robots were destroyed. Raven then shook her head. "Not likely. Slade is the type of person that would think of every outcome and make sure it goes in his favor. Even though we managed to beat these robots, I can't help but feel like it was a part of his plan," she said with clear caution in her voice, given the last time she and her team fought the mercenary, or at least his robotic double. "You should get back to your team so you guys can figure this out," the blonde author suggested, with heroine agreeing before opening a portal to transport her back to the tower. "While my friends and I deal with Slade, what will you be doing?" she asked, wondering what her friend's plans for the day were, since she and the other Titans are going to be on extra alert given these sudden attacks. Giving the Bluette one of his signature grins, the Uzumaki answered her question. "I'm actually going to a museum exhibit tonight. I've heard they've got something interesting to reveal and they're throwing a gala to celebrate. If you've dealt with Slade by then, feel free to join me. And bring Starfire if you want. Oh, and dress nice," he said, offering her an invite as the halfling gave a small nod before walking into the portal as it closed behind her, leaving him alone with the robot bodies and the two baristas who watched from the sidelines. "Coffee machine still working?" he asked as one of the baristas glanced into the destroyed coffee shop. "Somehow, yeah," they said, sounding surprised upon seeing that the machine was still pretty much intact. "If you guys make me a cup of coffee, then I'll be more than happy to help clean," he said, offering to help clean the debris in exchange for some coffee. It was now past lunchtime as Naruto entered his apartment with an exhausted sigh as he was dirty from helping clean the coffee shop after the whole fight, as he now needs a shower as he walked through the living room before stopping while narrowing his eyes. "I'll admit, I almost didn't realize you were there," he said, turning around with a kunai in his hand as he stared at the intruder in his apartment. Not recognizing the man at all, but the suit he wore was similar to the robots he fought with earlier, as it was a black bodysuit with metal plating and a mask that covered the right side of his face completely while the left side was orange and only had a single eye hole. Honestly, this guy sort of reminds me of Kakashi-sensei. He thought, remembering his old sensei from his early genin years. I would be disappointed if you didn't know I was here. The man said, as even from the way he spoke and held himself, the former shinobi could tell that this man was not someone to underestimate. Making it look like he had relaxed his stance, Naruto still held the kunai and was ready in case the stranger attacked. Are you this Slade I've heard so much about? He questioned as he kept his guard up given the vague info Raven had given him. The man chuckles a little as he answered. That is one of my many names, yes. And you would be Naruto Uzumaki, a friend to a certain titan. He said, causing the blonde to stiffen a little at how this man knew him as well, his friendship with Raven, but he made sure to not show any sign of surprise. I have been watching you for a while now, ever since you caught my attention with the Puppet King. He added, revealing that he was secretly surveying the Titans' fight against the living puppet. That puppet guy was working for you? The Uzumaki asked, tightening his grip on his kunai upon hearing this. No, I just like to keep tabs on everyone in this city, be them heroes, or villains. Slade honestly answered, as he had no affiliation with the Puppet King and couldn't care less if that villain was killed or not. I was watching the Puppet King in his attack on the Titans when I came across you. He added, finding the supposed civilian intriguing from the footage at the abandoned theater. Should I be flattered? Naruto sarcastically asked, wishing that this guy would just get to the point already. The masked mercenary knew he was annoying his latest interest, as it amused him slightly. Ever since I saw you fight alongside Raven and Starfire, you have piqued my interest. Especially when you fought Robin and came out unscathed. He commented, clearly impressed given the boy wonder being the student of the Dark Knight. That Robin was just the body, as it wasn't really Robin I was fighting. He clarified, repeating what Raven had told him earlier. Even so, you impressed me. And then you impressed me again when you fought against my robots. This time, Slade moved slightly to show he held the remote to the TV before turning it on, surprising the shinobi to see footage of him and Raven fighting against the robots, as the footage ended when it showed him getting shot by the odd-looking gun. That weapon was a test. If it worked on a Titan, then it would work on them all. But then you took the blast for her. He admitted, since those attacks on the Titans were just mere tests. What test exactly? The gun did nothing to me. Naruto asked, getting angry hearing that his friend was going to be a test subject to that weapon. It did at first. The masked man simply said, getting the blonde to once again tense. You see, the weapon infects you with nanoscopic probes which I can control. He explained as he produced a tablet, showing a diagram of Naruto's bloodstream and how the probes were coursing through his body, making the Uzumaki feel even more violated than all his past missions. With these probes, I could have killed you with a mere press of a button. He explained, since these probes are a mere insurance policy. Could have? Naruto questioned, as this bit of information had caught his undivided attention. This diagram was made a minute after you were shot. This one. Slade said, now sounding a little annoyed before swiping across the tablet to show another diagram of Naruto's bloodstream, except now probe-free. Was made a half-hour later. Somehow, there isn't a single trace of my probes anywhere. He said, pondering if this young man was a meta-human with a very rare ability. Is that Kyuubi's doing? Naruto thought, wondering if the Kyuubi's chakra was still healing him after all this time when it had completely merged with his body, making him a yokai. Is that why you're here? To find out why I don't have your probe things anymore? He questioned, now knowing the real reason why this man was here. At this moment, I couldn't care less how you did it, but I am curious about it. Slade thoughtfully admitted, intrigued by what this young man's capabilities may be, as his single eye took on a look that his target did not like. I am here for a different reason. You are going to help me break the Titans. He firmly stated, like it was a command and not an option. For a whole minute, Naruto just stared at the masked man with narrowed eyes, as neither of them said anything as they stared at each other. PFF, ha 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 ha, that is, until the Uzumaki began laughing almost hysterically. You think I'm going to help you? He continued to laugh before calming down but still held a smile, even if it wasn't a real one. What makes you think I would? Like you said, your probes don't work on me so you can't control me at all. He reminded the mercenary of his own statement since he's now calling his bluff. Not you, no. Slade trailed as the TV suddenly changed to a different video, showing each of the Titans on a boat in front of a large device that looked like it malfunctioned before a large gun similar to the one that shot Naruto appeared behind the Titans and shot each of them before they could do anything. Naruto's widened, finally realizing what Slade meant. Aower. Roaring in anger, he seemed to appear in front of Slade from across the room as he grabbed the masked man's head and slammed him into the wall with the mask he wore cracking lightly while in his free hand. He created a ball of red chakra and held it at the man's chest while his eyes flashing red before they turned back to blue. Release them. Release them now. He demanded with a shout since nobody targets his friends or mate and gets away with it as he pressed the man's head further against the wall. Interesting. Slade muttered, intrigued as he saw the author's eyes change color as he then stared at the ball of energy with interest. If you kill me, or harm me in any way, then one of my robots will activate the probes and kill each and every Titan, including your friend Raven. He calmly said, revealing that even if he dies here and now, his probes within the Titans lives within mere seconds afterward. Snarling, Naruto increased the pressure on the mask with pieces of it falling to the ground while the Rasengan he held lightly touched Slade's chest, tearing apart the armor like it was nothing. Without warning, he released Slade and dissipated the Rasengan. If you hurt them, if you hurt her, then I will kill you, he threatened with his voice turning deep and aggressive as his eyes flashed red again. Slade looked at the blonde and actually believed he could do it as the Titans were heroes and would never kill, but this person didn't care about any of that, which made him all the more dangerous. You wouldn't be the first to give me that threat. He commented before walking towards the door. Now, follow me. He calmly commanded without even looking behind him as the Uzumaki followed, all while glaring at him the entire time. Later that night, Raven appeared in front of Naruto's apartment door along with Starfire and Robin by her side as all three of them were dressed differently than they usually do. The sorceress herself was now wearing a black dress that ended at her knees along with matching colored heels, and a dark blue open top over the dress, but going by her facial expression it was clear she wasn't very comfortable in it as she kept fidgeting. The boy wonder just wore a standard tuxedo while also still wearing his mask. And finally, the Tamaranian princess wore a light purple dress with unattached long white sleeves. Before she knocked on the door, Raven looked towards Robin. Remind me why you're here again? She questioned since the Uzumaki only extended the invitation to her and her alien teammate. These types of events are usually targeted for robberies. He simply said with a shrug, but a glare from his demonic teammate made him sweat a little. Starfire told me that you were both going to a gala tonight and she asked if I wanted to join. He added since the Redette also invited him to come along. Shooting a quick glare towards Starfire, Raven then replied towards the Gotham resident. I thought you would be concentrating on finding Slade. She said given the recent attacks on the Titans earlier this morning. I would rather be searching for him, but Starfire insisted that I go with her. Robin replied with reluctant in his tone. Plus, I've got both Cyborg and Beast Boy doing that for me. Robin added since he hated the fact that while he was out trying to have a good time, Slade was somewhere in the city planning something again. I just wanted friend Robin to enjoy this gallery of art with us. Starfire said to Raven, giving the indigo-haired girl a puppy dog look. Shaking her head, the halfling just sighed since while she knew Robin has met Naruto before, she would still rather they keep minimum contact with each other as it was honestly bad enough that Starfire already knew about Naruto and that he was the one that helped with the Puppet King but was just thankful that the princess hasn't said anything about that yet. With those thoughts in mind, Raven raised her hand and knocked on the door as she waited but no one answered so she knocked again with the same result. Is he not here? Starfire asked with clear confusion since they were in the right building. So, he invites us to the gala and has already left. Robin asked, not sounding impressed since he was told that Raven had run into Naruto in the city and that he had invited her and the team to the gala. The gala starts in a half hour, so maybe Naruto was already there. He suggested since events like these would normally be packed the line as well just to enter security as well to get through. The ashen-skinned titan just looked at the door knowing that something wasn't right. Maybe he was just running late and is expecting us to meet him there. She theorized before suddenly all of their communicators went off at the same time, making her jump a little as she wasn't expecting it. Robin opened his and scowled. Looks like there's a robbery in a nearby lab, Beast Boy and Cyborg are already heading there, so let's go. He said as he pulled off his tux's shirt to reveal his normal outfit before taking off down the hall towards the fire exit with the girls following after, not caring to change their clothes as they knew they had no time. Naruto scowled even more than he usually would as he's currently in a lab and staring at a thermal blaster which Slade wanted him to steal. Can't believe I'm actually doing this, he grumbles to himself, since this was like the Forbidden Scroll incident when he was still a kid, but it didn't help because there was the fact that Slade liked to remind him if he didn't do as ordered, the Titans would die from a push of a button. What also didn't help was what he was wearing, as the masked mercenary just so happened to make him a uniform which was mostly black from head to toe with dark orange linings, while his right shoulder was the same color as the suit, while his left shoulder was covered in a dark orange mesh with his left arm in a white sleeve, as he was also wearing a mask that looked almost identical to Slade's except it was fabric and not armored, that and he had both eye holes. While he hated the man, the former shinobi couldn't deny that the man had an okay sense of fashion as he thought about keeping the suit once this was all over, since it reminds him of what the ANBU wear save for the animal facial markings. Looking ahead, Naruto could see the thermal blaster in a highly secure safe, as even just by looking at it he knew that alarms would go off once it opens no matter what he'd do. Wanting to get this over with, the blonde reached into a pouch and pulled out a disc before throwing it towards the safe as the disc shifted and became a very sharp S that stabbed into the door as beeping could be heard before the disc suddenly exploded, taking the safe doors with it. Taking hold of the thermal blaster, the masked Uzumaki could easily hear the many footsteps of multiple guards running towards his location before stowing the weapon in another pouch as he smashed through the closest window and ran out onto the balcony, jumping into the scaffolding above where he watched as the guards ran outside and then back inside when they didn't see anyone. Landing back on the ground, Naruto turned around but stopped when he saw Cyborg, Beast Boy, and Starfire standing ahead and looking ready to fight him before hearing footsteps behind him, making him take a deep breath and turned his head, seeing both Robin and Raven blocking his exit. Upon seeing how well the sorceress dressed was, the Uzumaki blushed but couldn't help but groan since he had forgotten all about the gala which would have started by now. Another reason to beat the crap out of Slade, he mentally growled, already making plans for the mercenary when he got the chance. "You're not Slade," Robin stated with narrowed eyes, wondering if this was another robot or if it was somebody new. Naruto wanted nothing more than to explain what was happening but knew the consequences if he did. "What will you do now?" he heard Slade's voice speaking in through an earpiece within the mask he wore. "Will you fight them?" he questioned with his tone steady as if studying if he would willingly fight his friends. "Sorry, but I've got to go," the masked Uzumaki said, the mask changing his voice slightly as to not be recognized, as he suddenly jumped off the side, shocking all of the Titans there as they all ran to the edge and saw him, somehow, running down the side of the building. "After him," Robin ordered as he and Cyborg ran towards the stairs while the others would fight the thief from above while they would meet them at the bottom. Beast Boy jumped off the balcony and turned into a pterodactyl as Raven and Starfire simply flew after. Skiiiiiee screeching, the changeling raised his talons and was just about to catch the thief when the masked man suddenly hugged the wall, making him fly past. Seeing an opportunity, Naruto jumped off the wall and landed on the green-skinned Titan's wing. Using his chakra, he was able to stay on the wing even as the Titan did everything, he could knock him off. Seeing that she couldn't use her starbolts in case she hit Beast Boy, Starfire flew down and tried punching Naruto, but he easily dodged to the side, so she swung again, but he grabbed her fist and swung her around into her shape-shifting friend as the impact knocked them away as the shinobi jumped back to the wall of the lab. Once again, he moved away as Raven had used her magic to throw objects at him as he hesitated, and it cost him as she managed to throw a dumpster nearby at him as it hit him hard, disorientating him slightly, but he quickly recovered before pulling out a disc and threw it as it exploded in a flash of light, blinding the demoness for a moment, allowing him to take this chance, and ran past her since he doesn't want to fight her. However, his eyes widened when he saw a blue beam heading right for him, courtesy of Cyborg. Before jumping over it, he turned and saw the attack hit Raven in the back and into the wall where she began to fall, and he could see she was unconscious from the blast. Let her fall. He heard Slade order through the earpiece, but he ignored him as he suddenly jumped towards the halfling and grabbed her in midair but quickly realized he had no way of getting back to the wall as he was falling too fast to properly correct himself. Somehow managing to twist in the air, the Uzumaki turned and made sure the impact with the ground would hit his back and not Raven. Thud, afk. Once he hit the ground, Naruto shouted in pain but was thankful that he managed to land in a nearby alley and that it gave him a spare few seconds away from the rest of the Titans as he wasn't paying attention when the bluette in his arms regained consciousness, groaning at the headache she had gotten from the sonic blast. Seeing who she was on, the sorceress was quick to jump back and encase the man in her magic, effectively trapping him. Well, this is an odd thank you. Naruto commented as the demoness magic had a hold on each of his limbs so he couldn't even move. Who are you? And why would I thank you? She asked with narrowed eyes. For saving you. He retorted as if it was obvious. Look, I don't have time for this so just let me go. He told her since if she doesn't let him go, then Slade would make her given his refusing to let her fall after getting friendly fired on by her cybernetic teammate. Raven didn't say anything as she saw her team appear and surround the man once again. Who are you? Robin demanded, unintentionally repeating the bluette's question from mere moments ago. If you don't do something, then I will. Slade said through the earpiece, thumbing the button slightly. Raven stepped forward and raised a hand, intending to take off his mask. Now desperate to get away before he was found out, Naruto concentrated before shouting. All were. As he shouted, he released some of the Kyuubi's chakra which quickly destroyed Raven's magic around him before disappearing like it was never there. Now that he was able to move his limbs, the masked Uzumaki was quick to use a substitution jutsu with a nearby bin confusing everyone there. Find him. Robin shouted, completely angry that their lead to Slade was gone. The entire team scattered but Raven stayed where she was, staring at the spot Naruto was at in shock. No. She whispered with eyes widened with slight fear before sinking into the ground where she quickly appeared in front of Naruto's apartment door once again as she pounded on the door, not wanting to believe what she saw. Naruto! Naruto, please answer the door! She shouted as several lights down the hallway exploded due to the emotions she was feeling but still no one answered so she teleported her way inside the apartment. Because it was dark out right now, the room she was in was cast in shadows thanks to the lamppost outside as she turned on the light where she saw an overturned chair and spiderweb cracks on the wall next to it indicating that there was a struggle here but she didn't know who Naruto was struggling with, or who it was that struggled with him. Feeling that she was losing control of her emotions, the demonic titan sat down on the couch and hugged herself. Azeroth Mitrian Zinthos, she whispered before repeating her chant to herself again and again until she had regained control over her emotions, albeit barely, as she then stood up and took a shaky breath. If that really is you Naruto, then you'd better have a good reason for this. She thought as she slowly sunk into the floor leaving the apartment as the lights flickered off. Making his way into the hideout, Naruto ripped off his mask and stormed his way towards Slade and his throne, throwing the thermal blaster towards him which he caught with ease. There, you have what you want. The shinobi sneered as he glared at the mercenary. Excellent work, you would make a fine apprentice. Perhaps even better than Robin could ever be. Slade commented while examining the weapon he had the whiskered blonde steal for him. This deal won't save you forever, sooner or later, your plans will fail, and I'll be there to kill you. The Uzumaki firmly stated since this was a promise, and Naruto Uzumaki never goes back on a promise. Slade said nothing unfazed at the threat as monitors appeared next to Naruto, catching his attention. The Titans still have no idea that my chronoton detonator was more than a decoy. Now that my probes are inside their bodies, they could remain undetected for years, decades even. The footage showed each of the Titans getting shot and then the diagrams of the probes attaching themselves to their blood cells. Unless, of course, you disobey me, and I decide to destroy them all with a push of a button. He warned as the next scene to show on the screens was when the Uzumaki saved Raven from her fall. Naruto could only scowl in understanding because if he tried to save any of them, then they would all die. Am I going to steal something else now? He demandingly asked, knowing this wasn't over. Your next target is in Wayne Enterprises. Slade said as he went over to a workbench and made a few adjustments to the thermal blaster before walking back over to his forced underling where he attached the blaster to his wrist and stepped back allowing the blonde author to examine it and flexed his wrist as the weapon itself was attached to a brace below his palm as the weapon fired, destroying one of the screens next to him. I'll send you the details of what I want when you get there. The masked man simply said as he stepped into the shadows of his lair leaving only his single eye visible. Still holding his scowl, Naruto simply picked up and put on the mask before leaving, making sure to slam the door off its hinges on his way out. Slade just watched him leave before turning back towards his monitor as he examined each Titan's biological scan and made sure to note of anything interesting. Back at the Titan's tower, Raven appeared and saw each member of the team were working on figuring out Slade's motive and whoever this new person was as Starfire was the first to notice her appearance as she floated over to the sorceress. Friend Raven, is everything okay? The Tamaranian princess asked as her fellow heroine just glanced at her and shook her head lightly before speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. Robin, can I speak to you for a moment? She asked with seriousness as the boy wonder wanted to say that he was too busy, but hearing how serious she was he walked over to her. Raven, what's wrong? He asked as the bluette brought him over to the other side of the room so that no one else would hear them. I think I know who the person working for Slade is. She said with her usual stoic tone, but internally, she was worried. Robin's eyes widened upon hearing that the team's sorceress knew the identity of the person they've recently fought. Who is it? He asked in a demanding-sounding tone wanting to know who Slade had working for him. Before I say who it is, I'm not entirely sure he's actually working for Slade. I think he's being blackmailed somehow. Raven explained, putting the Gotham hero in deep thought. Who is it? He still demanded because the sooner they know the person's identity, the sooner they'll find Slade. The halfling hesitated before finally speaking. I think it's Naruto. I can't explain how I know, I just do. She said as Robin spun around and was about to run to the computer before she firmly grabbed his arm. Robin, if it really is Naruto, then I don't think he's doing this willingly. She said as she knew the Uzumaki wouldn't willingly steal nor actually do something for Slade since she'd told him about their past encounter with the mercenary. The boy wonder seems to think about it before carefully asking. Do you trust him? He asked since his mentor taught him to never let personal feelings cloud his judgment. The demoness was surprised by the question, but she already knew the answer. Yes. She answered without her voice wavering in the slightest, showing she really did trust Naruto. Sighing at how this might get complicated, Robin crossed his arms slightly shaking his head. Okay, if you trust him, then I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Do you know how he's being blackmailed at all? He asked as the bluette just shook her head not knowing what Slade even had to blackmail her friend. Alright, let's check out his place. Maybe we'll find something there. He suggested since the best place to start would be where Naruto lives. I was just there. Raven said getting a surprised look from Robin. What? I wanted to make sure it was Naruto. Anyway, when I got inside there was a chair overturned and cracks in the wall, like someone was thrown against it. She said while telling her leader what she had saw when she went to his apartment. Was that all? Robin asked with her nodding. That's not much to go on. Take me there anyway, there might be something you missed. He said getting to nodded as she readied a portal while he turned back to the team. We'll be back. We're just checking out a lead and be back soon. He informed the rest of the Titans as he and the sorceress stepped through the portal. Arriving inside Naruto's apartment, Robin glanced around and raised an eyebrow at how plain everything was as he easily saw the chair and wall and checked them over as the chair told him nothing before going examined the wall accidentally kicking something on the floor. Looking down, he saw pieces of metal that didn't fit with anything in the apartment as he kneeled down and picked one of the pieces up so he could look at it closely. I know this, these pieces are from Slade's mask. He said immediately identifying the pieces of metal. So that means Naruto had managed to pin Slade to the wall somehow meaning he'd fought back. Raven said feeling even more worried for her friend if Slade came to see him in person. Before Robin could say anything, his communicator went off. Cyborg, have you found anything? He asked, answering, wondering if the team's technological expert found something regarding either Slade or Naruto. Maybe, there was a silent alarm tripped at Wayne Enterprises, might be connected to Slade, Cyborg replied, informing the other two Titans about the break-in to the leader's mentor's company building. Best to check it out, even if it's nothing, we'll meet you there. The Titan leader said before hanging up, as he then turned towards the sorceress. Do you know where Wayne Enterprises is? He asked as she nodded and made a portal that let them sink into the ground. Breaking open a vent, Naruto jumped down into a large room before glancing around to make sure no one was around. Seeing that he was alone, he walked over to the only device in the room that was just oddly floating under a spotlight. Who the hell designed these places? He muttered to himself as he grabbed the device. Naruto. He suddenly heard Raven's voice, making him freeze with his hand on the device as he turned around and saw all of the Titans at the entrance. Sighing, the Uzumaki pulled off the mask, making everyone but Raven and Robin gasp at who it was as he looked at them and could see the hurt and confusion in the Bluette's eyes as he hated himself for causing that look. What gave it away? He asked, pocketing the device since he was still on a mission. He doesn't even want to do but had to. That energy you used, I recognized it from before. She answered, sensing the same demonic energy he had used to escape along with that night. Naruto just stood silent, not even going to make a reply since he mentally facepalmed, forgetting that he had used his demonic chakra to escape her magical bindings. You guys aren't going to let me walk out of here, are you? He questioned rhetorically since he doesn't want to fight them, but sadly the choice wasn't his to make. What do you think? Asked Beast Boy as he changed into a gorilla and roared, pounding his chest as the rest of the Titan were prepared to fight, while the blonde shinobi glanced upward towards the vent above them since it would be easy to just evade all of them and leave without hurting any of them. Do not run, fight them now. He heard Slade ordered as if he had read his thoughts. I've got the device, why can't I just leave? He quietly asked, with none of the Titans being able to hear him since he already has what the mercenary wanted. Fight them, or I'll end them. Slade firmly commanded through the earpiece, making the Uzumaki scowl as he threw away the mask and ran towards the Titans. AAAWWAAWWWWRR. The green-colored gorilla roared as he jumped at the blonde, aiming to grab him and end the fight, only to his shock and surprise his opponent easily caught his large fist and proved himself stronger as he swung the primate around and against a wall. Starfire then flew at him and fired a few starbolts at his feet. Please, friend Naruto, why are you doing this? She begged, wanting to know why her new friend would commit such thievery for their worst villain. Sighing, the shinobi crouched down and leaped at the princess. Sorry Star, this is something I just have to do. He reluctantly said, grabbing her by her shoulder and flipped her towards the floor as he prepared to drop kick her. Seeing that he was refusing to back down, the alien girl's eyes glowed green as she flew back, grabbing the Uzumaki's incoming foot before hurling him out the window, where he immediately used his chakra to scale up the wall as she followed him as she threw a fist, but was surprised when he caught it with ease before kneeing her in the stomach and slammed her against the wall, knocking her towards the ground. Quickly splinting up towards the roof of the building, Naruto was blindsided by Robin, who had appeared through a portal with his bow staff and managed to hit him in the head with it, knocking him off balance as Raven, Cyborg, and Beast Boy also emerged from the portal. Is Slade blackmailing you? The Gotham resident shouted, clearly angry at seeing Starfire get hurt. Naruto said nothing as he rubbed his head a little as he then pulled out two kunais which he twirled around before running towards Robin, who had managed to block one but wasn't quick enough to avoid the one aimed at his feet, giving him the opportunity to spin around as he kicked his bird-themed opponent hard enough to not only knock him off his feet, but also caused him to roll across the ledge as he held onto it to keep himself from falling. Seeing Cyborg aiming his arm at him, he threw a kunai directly into his sonic cannon's barrel as the blade wasn't only deeply lodged to it, but also causing it to short-circuit. What? The cybernetic titan exclaimed as he looked at his damaged arm, only to quickly notice the interior was glowing. Crap! He shouted as it exploded, destroying his forearm as the explosion also knocked him against the eye of the building's large sign. Leaping over, Naruto then placed a disc on his chest that suddenly electrified him into unconsciousness. Alright dude, now you really unleashed the beast. Beast Boy exclaimed as he transformed into a tiger and pounced towards the Uzumaki only to be blinded by a puff of smoke as well, finding a log underneath him, leaving him confused long enough for his opponent to drop from the R of the side to deliver an axe kick directly onto his head, shifting his form back to normal while also knocking him unconscious with snot and saliva seeping from his nose and mouth. Knowing there was only one person left, the shinobi turned around to see Raven staring at him. "I never wanted to do this." He admitted not wanting to fight his friend after taking down the rest of her team. "Then please stop." She begged, wanting him to stop all of this. "I can't. I just can't," he said, sounding as though he was fighting himself before raising his arm, aiming the thermal blaster and prepared to fire, but stopped as he clenched his hand and fell to his knees as he punched the roof, refusing to continue fighting just as Robin pulled himself back up onto the roof. "Then I will," he then heard Slade say, causing him to widen his eyes and looked towards the blue-haired titan as she looked confused for a second before suddenly feeling agonizing pain everywhere within her entire body. "Wayawag, hea apanianiing." She cried out as it felt like her entire being was being stabbed, electrocuted, and burned all at the same time, as it wasn't just her, but the rest of the titans, as the sudden pain was causing them all to cry out. "Ag." Unable to contain it, she screamed in agony as she fell to her knees while her powers caused the building's sign and windows to completely shatter. Naruto ran to her side, holding her hand in deep worrying as he could see the same thing happening to the rest of the titans as they all screamed and shouted in agonizing pain. "Stop this. Please," he shouted, begging Slade to stop this as he doesn't want to watch his friend suffer. "The only way for it to stop is if you attack her," Slade shouted as he slammed his fist down onto his chair as he pressed the button again, intensifying the pain he was putting the titans through. Tears formed in the Uzumaki's eyes, refusing to do this, but then widened them when he felt a hand on his cheek, causing him to look downward as he saw the sorceress looking at him with her face scrunched up in pain. "It's okay. Just do it, Ata-Acme," she said through gritted teeth, having barely managed to overhear Slade's voice through his earpiece. Closing his eyes, Naruto stood and aimed the thermal blaster as he saw his friend nodding her head. "Ayawa." With a shout, he fired, hitting the halfling in the chest, knocking her unconscious. Almost immediately, everyone stopped screaming as the pain faded away, leaving him to look around as saw that everyone else was unconscious due to the immense pain they felt. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Raven before running away, all while having a look of pure rage as his eyes flashed red as his pupils became slits. "I'm ending this now," he thought as he vanished in a burst of speed, knowing exactly where to go. A few moments later and the titans began to wake up one by one. "What the hell happened?" Beast Boy groaned as he rubbed his head before noticing the dribble over her face and chest as well a cartoonish large bump on his head. "Naruto handed our asses to us, that's what happened," Cyborg replied, holding his damaged arm as few sparks flickered from the damaged circuits. "It's not his fault, he didn't have a choice," Raven dishearteningly said, catching everyone's attention as she held herself as few tears seeped from her eyes. "What do you mean, he didn't have a choice? He could have just beat us and walked away. But instead, he somehow tortured us all," the green-skinned shapeshifter shouted, wiping the snot and drool off his face before wincing in pain as he now took notice of the swollen lump on his head. "That wasn't him," the demoness shouted back, surprising everyone as she stood up and stomped her way towards the changeling as she roughly grabbed his aching shoulders. "Naruto refused to attack me, and then the pain started. I think it was Slade that did that, not Naruto," she aggressively said, glaring at her teammate for accusing her friend of doing that to them. Cyborg looked at his other arm, activating a scanner. "My scanners aren't picking anything up, but if we head back to the tower then I should be able to figure out what happened," he suggested, since he'll need to replace his damaged arm as everyone returned towards their headquarters to regroup. Slade stared at the screen in front of him, watching Naruto defeating the Titans, but frowned at how he refused to hurt Raven as well as how he apologized before leaving her as he glanced down at the smaller screen in front of him, trying to formulate a plan in his head before he heard footsteps behind him. "You did well, but if I see you hesitate like that again, then I'll kill them all," he stated as he turned and looked at his apprentice. "Not if I kill you first," Naruto growled as he suddenly punched the mercenary in the face, managing to punch the man right through his own chair and into the screens behind him. You did something that no one has done in years, not since I left my home. He said, glaring towards the person who'd forced him to hurt his friends. Rubbing his jaw, Slade stood up and glared towards the Uzumaki. And what would that be? He asked, popping his shoulder as he clenched his fists ready to fight. You pissed me off. He shouted, tapping into Kyuubi's chakra, giving him power as his features changed, with his teeth turning into fangs, his nails into claws, his whisker marks deepened as he let out a furious feral-sounding snarl. If it was anyone else, they would be terrified, but Slade slowly stood and pulled out a bowstaff ready to knock his apprentice back to his place. In the Titan's comms room, Beast Boy was covered in wires as Cyborg typed into a computer. I found something, he announced as a picture of the changeling's blood cells appeared on the screen. The enhanced sensors are picking up radio interference on a nanoscopic scale. He explained as everyone gasped and they saw small devices latch onto every blood cell in sight as they could all make out the familiar S symbol on each device. Those things are inside me. Ew. The shapeshifter whined with a disgusted expression, cringing as he felt extremely violated. They're inside all of us, billions of them. That's how Slade did what he did to us. The cybernetic titan said, now understanding why they all recoiled in pain during their fight against Naruto. If that's true, then Slade could destroy us at any moment. Robin spoke with his arms crossed and eyes narrowed, now realizing that everything was a setup. Unless Naruto does what he says. Raven said, feeling relieved knowing that her friend was innocent and was forced to do all of this before suddenly sensing something as she turned towards the window and looked out. I think I sense Naruto, I know where they are. She announced, getting her teammates' attention. Panting slightly in exhaustion, Slade glared at Naruto from across the room as his armor was covered in deep scratch marks and his mask was cracked once again. When this power of yours runs out, I'll break you and force you to watch as I kill each of the Titans, starting with Raven. He said manically. Even as beaten up as he was, the masked mercenary could see the whiskered blonde was also getting tired. A war. That remark further enraged the Uzumaki as he let out a roar and splinted towards the man, aiming a swipe towards his midsection. Slade stepped back and avoided the attack, but the force of it was still enough to make him skid back a few feet, but his forced apprentice didn't stop as he used the momentum from his splint to spin around and aim a roundhouse kick towards his gut, as the mercenary only just barely managing to block it before grunting in pain when he felt the bones in his arms ache from the impact before seizing the opportunity as he pulled out a knife and slashed the shinobi from his shoulder down to his waist. Aaggg, Naruto shouted and jumped back as he held his wound, as he could see his blood seeping from between his fingers, and the masked man could also see that the wound was already closing. Interesting, Slade said, intrigued, witnessing the Uzumaki's healing abilities. I underestimated you, as that was my mistake. But attacking me, that was yours. He commented as he showed him the button to activate the probes. But before he could press the button, his hand was encased in black energy, making him glance behind the shinobi where he saw the Titans had arrived and were glaring at him from behind his apprentice. You're finished, Slade, Robin said with a glare as he readied his staff. A pleasure to see you again, Robin. Unfortunately that won't be happening today, another time perhaps. The mercenary said, sounding surprisingly calm despite his situation, before pulling out a disc and threw it at the group as it exploded and created a smoke screen. The sudden diversion caused Raven to lose her concentration and released Slade's hand as he pressed the button activating the probes within the Titans' bodies. Hearing a noise, Naruto looked and saw a machine activating at the same time, just as everyone began to scream in agony as the probes electrocuted them from the inside as they all collapsed as recoiled in immense pain. War. Seeing this, Naruto roared again as his anger grew as he suddenly appeared in front of Slade and grabbed the man by his throat, lifting him up with one hand before slamming him down with enough force causing the ground to crack under the pressure, as he then grabbed his arm and threw him to the side into the machine controlling the probes. Slade shouted out as the machine infected him with probes, which immediately began to destroy him from the inside as he couldn't even move to destroy the remote to save himself from his own probes. The Uzumaki then stood in front of him and readied a Rasengan which was glowing red just like his eyes. Now die, he shouted, slamming the Rasengan into the mercenary as the machine behind him exploded, causing a chain reaction as other machines began to self-destruct as the sudden reaction had thrown them back. But he landed and saw that the probes have stopped working as those that were infested began turning back to normal as he immediately ran to Raven. "We need to get out of here," he shouted as the lair began to collapse from the chain reaction caused by the explosion. "Azeroth Metrian Zinthos," the sorceress chanted as a large bird made of her magic appeared from the floor and protected them just as another piece of machinery exploded next to them as the bird enveloped them all and sunk into the ground as another explosion destroyed everything. "And that should be the last of those probes," Cyborg said as Beast Boy unhooked himself from a machine and began to dance like there was a party. Naruto meanwhile sat on the couch next to Raven, Robin, and Starfire. "I'm glad that's over with," he sighed in relief as he stretched with the others agreeing. "Is Slade really gone?" the princess asked, her voice sounding a little scared that they maybe destroyed their most dangerous foe along with his lair. Robin just shrugged. "I'm not sure, once that place is secure, we'll check it out," he suggested, wanting to know himself as he then glanced towards the blonde and reminded himself that he needed to talk to him about everything that happened as he would do it now, but everyone was relaxing and celebrating knowing they had just beaten their greatest villain yet. Meanwhile, the Changeling and Cybernetic Titans felt that the celebration needed something. "Now's the perfect time for an all-you-can-eat," Cyborg began. "Freeform," Beast Boy continued, knowing exactly what Cyborg was talking about. "Breakfast explosion," they both shouted with grins as they ran to the kitchen. The Uzumaki then leans over towards the Bluette. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked as she looked confused but nodded, nonetheless. Standing up, she led him out of the comms room and towards her room as he was surprised when she actually invited him in as he gave her a questioning look to see if he really was allowed. "Do you want to talk in private?" Raven asked as her friend nodded. "Then this is the most private place in this whole tower," she stated, motioning for him to enter, which he did before closing her door. Stepping inside, Naruto glanced around the Demoness room and chuckled a little as he saw piles of books and candles sitting on top of them as her entire room was dark in both lighting and decoration. "You really are a goth, aren't you?" he asked, causing her to leer towards him with her arms crossed. Going over to her bed, she sat on the edge with the author joining her. "What is it you wanted to talk about?" she asked, wondering what her friend wanted to talk to her about after everything that had happened. "After everything that happened today, it made me realize something," Naruto began, surprising her at how serious he was. "I didn't want to tell you my past because I just wanted to forget about it and live my new life here. But with what happened, I realized I was just running away from my problems," he said, reminding her of their conversation the other day. "What do you mean?" she asked as he turned slightly to look her directly in her eyes. "I'm going to tell you everything," he said, getting her to softly gasp as he began to tell her about his past. "So, let me get this straight," Raven began after having just listened to Naruto told her about where he came from. "Like myself, you're from another dimension where almost everyone can use chakra and then use it to do practically anything from walking on water to raising the dead?" she questioned as he nodded to confirm she had his story right so far. "Your world also has shinobi, which is the main military system, and you were a low-level shinobi, a genin?" she asked, making sure she had this right. "Genin, but yes, and that's about the gist of it," the Uzumaki corrected with a nod, allowing the Bluette to continue. "You told me a lot about your world, but you didn't really tell me anything about your life, and you didn't tell me how you managed to cross dimensions. Did you use one of your techniques or something? Like how I use portals to travel?" she asked, raising a curious eyebrow since she still wants to know how her new friend came to this dimension. "I told you about how the shinobi system works and how I was placed on a team with two others to form Team 7. He reminded as the sorceress nodded before further explaining his former team. "My teammates were Sakura Haruno and Sasuke Uchiha, both were top of the class while I was at the bottom. We were placed with Kakashi Hatake, who mostly tried to teach us teamwork." He then proceeds to chuckle a little before continuing. "Our teamwork was terrible. Sasuke always did everything himself, Sakura did nothing but follow Sasuke, and all I did was try to show off to Sakura. He explained since the team's setup was pretty much doomed from the start with an emo Avenger, a love-struck fangirl, and an orphan who acts out just wanting people to acknowledge him. Did you have a crush on her? Raven then asked without really thinking as her tone sounded a little jealous as the whiskered blonde gave her an amused look as she looked away with a slight blush of embarrassment. It just sounded like it, that's all. She defended herself since she doesn't want him to get any ideas. Oh, somebody's jailhouse, she heard happy teasing tone making her eyes widen. Do you think he still has feelings for her? Timidity worryingly voiced, fearing that they were just a rebound for someone else. No way, you heard him, that Sakura skank only had eyes on this Sasuke prick. Rudeness crassly retorted since the Haruno sounds like a lovesick puppy blindly following its owner. I did for a little while, but after our first official mission outside the village, I realized she never really cared about me. Sasuke and I got hurt, and while we were resting in our client's house, Sakura tended to Sasuke while ignoring me completely. He admitted as a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Now that I think about, I wasn't as injured as Sasuke was. He could barely move after having a couple of dozen needles stabbed him in a bunch of pressure points. I was just tired from using too much chakra. He said, thinking back to his first C-ranked mission in Wave Country, which was bumped up due to missing Ninja Buza and Haku. The demonic halfling then coughed a little, getting his attention. I think you're getting off topic a little. She bluntly said, seeing that he was starting to get off topic. Blinking when he realized she was right, the Uzumaki grinned a little as he sheepishly chuckled. Oh, sorry. Anyway, during our first mission, Sasuke unlocked a special ability that only people in his family can acquire, the Sharingan. He said before his smile faltered. He was always looking for power, he was desperate for it. When he got his Sharingan, it was like his obsession got even worse. And then during an exam that would have allowed us to become Chunin, we were ambushed by a man named Orochimaru. He solemnly said, recalling the Uchiha's thirst for vengeance towards his older brother as well the day they encountered the snake Sannin. From the way you said his name, I'll hazard a guess and say you don't like him. Raven said, having heard the venom in his voice. Snorting, Naruto nodded like what she'd said was obvious. That's an incredible understatement. The man's a sick freak that experiments on children for fun. He even kills anyone if he knows he has no use for them anymore, and all so that he could obtain immortality. He explained, causing her ashen-gray skin to pale a little upon hearing how horrid the snake Sannin is, as the Justice League has those similar kinds of people in their rouge galleries. Which leads me to why he ambushed us in the middle of the exam, as we've did everything, we could have fight him, but we were badly outclassed. It turns out that Orochimaru was after Sasuke the entire time, just so he could give him the cursed mark. He further explained, cringing, recalling how he was swallowed by that giant snake summon after getting blown through the forest. Cursed mark? She questioned, slightly flinching at the mention of those two single words. Very interesting. Knowledge mused, wondering if this cursed mark is similar to demonic runes. I don't really know much about it. He admitted, since he only knows what it does to the bearer. All I know is that the cursed mark increases the wearer's chakra levels, strength, speed, all that sort of stuff. It also poisons the person's mind every time the person uses it. When Sasuke used it, he became addicted to it and began to believe that Orochimaru was the only person that would give him the power he needed. It didn't take long until he decided to defect and run away from the village. When we found out, me and 4 others were tasked with bringing him back. He explained before suddenly going quiet, remembering the failed retrieval mission. Hearing him suddenly go quiet, Raven grew concerned as she reaches a hand upon his shoulder. Are you alright? She asked as she could sense the distraught from him. Yeah, I'm fine. He replied, taking a breath as he continues. One by one, my team stayed back to hold off an enemy team while I went ahead. I eventually found Sasuke and tried to convince him to come back. He said as he stared towards the floor and clenched his hands. But in the end, he was far too gone, and we fought. The fight was bad as we've destroyed a lot of the valley we were in, using every jutsu we knew just to stop each other. But in the end, it wasn't enough, so I put all of my chakra into my last attack, with Sasuke doing the same. I'm not sure what happened, really. When we've slammed the attacks into each other, everything went white. Next thing I know, I'm waking up in one of Gotham City's hospital, not able to understand what anyone was saying. He followed up because one moment he was in the valley, next he was in a hospital which he'd assumed was back in Konoha. So, you don't really know how you got here? The sorceress asked in surprise since that really didn't explain how he had wound up in this dimension. I have a few ideas about how it happened, but I'll probably never know. Naruto said with a shrug, not really caring as he had tried to figure it out years ago and even tried to attempt it but never could. It sounded as though your last attack and Sasuke's were so powerful that it might have torn open a rift in your world to this one. She theorized as she placed a hand under her chin as she thought about it. If that's true, then you're lucky you didn't die because that amount of power would have torn your body apart. She stated since the Uzumaki was lucky to not be torn apart from the dimensional travel. You have no idea, he said with a small chuckle before pulling his collar down to reveal the scar Raven saw when they first met. This was given to me by Sasuke during our final attack, that plus all my other wounds. I shouldn't have survived crossing dimensions. But I was covered in demonic energy, as you like to call it, and that only just protected me. He said since the moment he'd woke up, he tried to connect with the Kyuubi only to find his mindscape emptied. What about that energy? What is it exactly? Raven asked since the more Naruto told her of his past, the more she wanted to know, and that energy was what she wanted to know about the most. Yes, tell us so that I can make that energy mine. Anger demanded, desiring the blonde's demonic energy to strengthen her own demonic might. I know something demonic. I wouldn't mind making ours, passion cooed in a suggestive tone, causing the halfling's cheeks to flush before mentally slapping herself to refocus on their conversation. Just like any other time she mentioned that particular energy, she could see her friend visibly hesitate as it was obvious that this particular topic was difficult for him to talk about, but she was starting to get desperate. Plus, he did say he would tell us everything and I'm hoping he would keep his promise. Happiness chirped softly, bouncing on her heels. Yeah, whatever that energy is, I want another crack at it. Bravery excitingly exclaimed, psyching herself up since she wants to test herself against him in a spar after witnessing him fight with that energy. More like wanting another go at his massive beep, screwing our fat asses. Rudeness snarked since she wouldn't mind another express trip to downtown Pound Town. After a few seconds, Naruto sighs as he knows he should just tell her and stop hesitating. That energy isn't demonic in any way, it's just chakra. Very, very potent chakra, but chakra, nonetheless. It's chakra from a being called a tailed beast, which in my world, there are 9 of, and each is more powerful than the last, with the strongest having 9 tails. He explained, getting the bluette to look at him a bit confused since the energy she had sensed within him wasn't even demonic, and yet still feels demonic to her. Whoa! Tailed beasts made completely out of energy. Knowledge trailed, gob-smacked, hearing that there are actual creatures made completely out of demonic feeling energy. And each stronger than the last. Timidity quivered, feeling scared, hearing that each beast was stronger than the other by the number of tails they have. Arggggg, where are they? I will fight them, slay them, and make their power mine. Anger roared, now wanting to fight these tailed beasts and consume their power to make her stronger than their father. I hold the strongest, the 9-tailed fox, the Kyuubi. He hesitatingly said, feeling afraid at revealing his most dangerous secret, as he knew it was ridiculous to be worried about it in this world, but it was something he feared ever since he first learned about it from Mizuki, along with why his own village despised him so much. How do you have the Kyuubi? Raven asked, unconsciously feeling relieved at the thought of Naruto not using demonic energy, only for her eyes to widen as she gained a small blush, watching as he lifted his shirt to reveal his stomach and a set of 6-pack abs which she had a hard time looking away from. Oh, hunky just got hunkier, Bravery mused, drinking in his abs, wondering what kind of physical training he'd taken to get them. Take it all off, Passion eagerly exclaimed, wanting to see him completely topless. What are you doing? She shouted, managing to look away from his body much to her emotion's disappointment. Snickering at her reaction, the Uzumaki then channeled his chakra, making familiar black markings appear on his stomach. This seal, which was placed on me on the day of my birth, imprisons the Kyuubi within me. It cannot escape no matter what, and it gives me the ability to draw on its power. But I can only draw a little at a time because I can't control it. He explained with cautious in his tone since he hadn't had much training to controlling the Kyuubi's chakra, unlike Gaara during the Oto and Suna invasion during the finals of the Chunin exams. The sorceress didn't even bother trying to understand the seal, even if he didn't just explain to her what it was, since she would have honestly just assumed it was a tattoo before taking a quick glance at his face, as she could see and sense that he looked worried. "Did you think I would hate you for this?" she asked, giving him a confused look given the fact she's half demon. Letting out a heavy sigh, the former shinobi began to explain. "For as long as I could remember, almost the entire village hated me, and I didn't know why. They would call me monster and demon, throw stones at me, hell, I've even had mobs chase and beat me a couple of times a month. But they never gave me a real reason why they hated me," he sadly said, causing the Titan to look shocked and disgusted. "They did what?" All of the demoness emotions exclaimed, equally shocked and disgusted, with timidity and happiness sobbing, knowledge and rudeness sneering, and bravery and anger, passion, and bravery releasing some bloodlust, wanting to slaughter those who dare harm their mate. "Wait, what?" the bluette mentally exclaimed with widened eyes, wondering where that came from. "I finally learned that they all hated me because I contained the Kyuubi. I guess I was scared that if anyone learnt my secret, then they would hate me no matter what," he said solemnly, as he then looked away, feeling even more worried about what his friend's reaction would be. Then, to his surprise, he felt her lightly touch his arm, causing him to turn his head towards her as he looked at her with wide eyes, as he saw the heroine giving him a gentle smile with a look of understanding. "I don't hate you, Naruto. You're my friend, as well as Starfire's and the others," Raven said assuredly, since she understands him pain, as well the burden placed upon him upon birth. Grinning, he suddenly pulled Raven into a hug. "Thank you, Raven." He thanked as he didn't know why exactly, but those words made him happy. Not used to giving hugs, the halfling awkwardly put her arms around the blonde's torso and patted his back a little. "Rachel," she said as he pulled away, giving her a confused look. "My real name is Rachel Roth," she clarified as she began sharing bits her own history, such as her home realm of Azarath along with her mother. Then what was a conversation turned to a tender kissing, which suddenly shifted to hours of passionate sex as the two were struggled up together with their naked bodies under the Titan's sheets as they breathed exhaust. "Wow. Just. Wow," the demoness just breathed out, not really knowing how to describe, now knowing how good her demon side felt that night when these two gotten intimate, as her ashen-colored skin was glistening with sweat and her indigo locks a ruffled mess. "Considering what we've all just been through, I think this was worth the broken bed frame." Naruto sheepishly chuckled, getting Rachel to give him an irritated leer, but the small smile on her lips says that she'd still enjoyed it, as she can repair her bed with magic. The two then pulled themselves closer and kissed before hearing several gasps getting their attention as they turned their heads to see the rest of the Titans standing in the open doorway with expressions of shock and disbelief frozen on their faces. With her face flushing as dark as the Tamaranian's hair, Raven yanked the covers to hide her exposed body, unknowingly flashing the Uzumaki's still erect manhood to her team, causing them to turn into pale gasping chibi, with Beast Boy and Cyborg drop fainting, feeling sheer inadequacy/resentment, Robin's eyes/mask shattering in utter shock, and Starfire blushing intensely while steam blew from her ears and nostrils upon seeing that her new friend was roughly the same size as the males of her species, as saliva dripped from her quivering mouth. Feeling the tension in the air, Naruto quickly spoke. "Want to head to my place?" he suggested, feeling like Ero Sannin upon getting caught peeping on women in the bathhouse/hot springs, only this time instead of furious women it's shocked heroes, and the roles have been reversed. Without even saying a word, the sorceress snapped her fingers as the two dropped through a portal, with the two landing upon the blonde's bed, with the bluette landing on top of him with their faces close to each other as they stared into their other's eyes, their cheeks flushed as their naked, sweat-coated bodies meshed together. Let's go again, Ray, you know he's ready to go another 2-3 hours tops." Passion sultrily cooed, feeling their whiskered lover's mighty serpent rub in between their inner thighs as well their valley of a butt. "Yeah, beep those teammates of ours and go back to beeping Blondie." Rudeness crassly stated, voicing her annoyance of their teammates spying on them like a bunch of voyeurs. Naruto was feeling both flustered and aroused, feeling the sorceress Double D mounds and erect nipples press against his bare chest while his erection throbbed in between her pelvis and cheeks as both tension and hormones rose before the two locked lips and were at it again. Only this time there was a sound barrier to block out the loud noises of their intimacy. The end. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Bye bye.